Cool, excellent. So, hello and welcome. This is the July Community Hangout after a quite long hiatus, I suppose, of not doing community updates. So, I am Matthew Haynes on the forums. I'm Bearded Inventor and I'm the community manager. With us in the room today, we have the two Toms, who I'll let introduce themselves.
Hey, I'm Tom Byrne. I'm a product design and support engineer here at Electricam. I rarely pop up on the forums, but when I do, I think I'm Tom Butner.
I'm Tom Saris. I'm communications manager for Electricam, and happy to be here.
And with us across the pond in a little window down on the side is Tony Smith, who's our new tech writer. So you can introduce yourself, Tony.
Yeah, that's right. Hi guys, anybody who's there, and yeah, I'm calling from London today, so it's rather dark here compared to the sunshine over there in California. And just to follow the trend, you'll find me on the forums as Smitty Tone.
Yeah, so Tony's been doing a really fabulous job of cleaning up our documentation and answering lots of questions on the forums. And generally helping people out. So we're super excited to have Tony, and I'm hoping Tony's excited to be here too.
Oh, definitely, yeah, definitely. No, it's been a lot of fun doing. There's been a lot of work to do, and hopefully now we've got some really good, really useful extra documentation for the devs out there.
Yeah. So we're going to be going over a few things in the Hangout today. Mostly we're going to be going over some of the cool new tools and resources that we've built out for our community and for developers. We're also going to show you a couple cool contests that you guys should know about, a cool new framework called Rocky, which we blogged about. We'll do a really quick live demo of that. And then we're going to, Joel Ware from the forums who started the Make Deck, asked about demoing the ISS overhead project, which is this guy here, which is an Instructables that I made, and that's really easy for other people to make as well. So I guess we will get started. So I've got my screen shared on a different computer. Let's see if we can pull that up. So the first thing we're going to kind of show off is our new community blog. So if you don't know about our community blog, it's definitely worth checking out. We have a bunch of people, a bunch of this sort of technical people from within Electricam who've been contributing articles to it. You'll find out about cool projects people are working on, IDE updates, all kinds of exciting things. The most recent article, I think it was pretty much literally just published, is this great project by Phil, who's one of our engineers in the UK. His 15-year-old son did a work placement project for a week or two, and one of the big things he did during that time period was build this cool little World Cup goal light. So everybody knows, or most people probably know about the Budweiser red light, which is the cool hockey light for Canadians that's imp-powered. And he built a really similar project, only instead of loud buzzing lights, there's this little soccer light that flashes whenever goals in the World Cup were scored. So fairly timely, but I guess a little late since I think the World Cup is over now. Although, I mean, that's
get one ready for next year, for the next time round. You know, get it all worked out and ready for 4 years down the line. That'll be, and then have it all ready right for the start of the tournament. So in a way, it's perfect.
Right. Follow your bracket from the very beginning.
Is the World Cup every year, 4 years?
Yeah.
Tom's a resident soccer expert here. Every 4 years. Somebody on Twitter suggested somebody should build a Tour de France fall counter for how many times people have fallen in the Tour de France.
Ouch.
So that'd be a cool project. If somebody can find an API for that, or host an API for that, that would be really fun, I think. But I mean, the goal light's a cool thing just in general. You know, if you can find an API for something that you're into, it's pretty easy to build some kind of ambient display or some kind of loud siren with the imp.
Sure.
So yeah, this is
a great basis for so many sporting events throughout the year in, year out. It's, you know, you can take that and just convert it into whatever sport you fancy, and off you go. It's a great basis.
Yeah, we actually, one of the newer products that lots of people might not be familiar with, unless you're Australian, I think, is this cricket scoreboard. So it's this green Victoria Bitters board back here. It was also produced by Buzz, the design firm who did the Budweiser Red Light. This one's for Victoria Bitter, which is an Australian beer, I believe. And it's a cricket scoreboard, so it does things like tell you when there's, I don't know, ducks and wickets.
I don't know.
Do you know cricket, Tony?
I don't actually. I don't. But my partner is Australian, so I usually rely on her for all the sporting information. So, but cricket is just one of those strange, last 5 days kind of things. How you can have a sporting event the last 5 days.
All I know is during testing it used to yell, "It's a 6" quite a bit, and it seemed that the tone of voice indicated that was a good thing.
Well, I also remember, like, the big thing that I remember was it would say, like, it would quack whenever there was a duck.
There was a duck.
Duck thing with like, people across the display.
Yeah. So that is a good one.
So that's a pretty exciting one, and I mean that's the basis for tons of projects that I've seen and lots of the really cool projects.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's mostly what the ISS project is as well, which we'll get to at the end. It's some lights hooked up to an API, and when an event happens, it triggers it. So
you see, that's what IoT is all about. It's about doing lots of interesting but simple things and putting them all together. It doesn't have to be incredibly complex. Let's connect to 12 different APIs. Let's have sensors of this kind, that kind, the other kind, and 3 types of flashing lights. It's the simplicity is always the best, I think.
Yeah, on that note, there's actually there's a Kickstarter that's using the IMP, which I'm super excited about, called Orb Next. They reached their funding goal, I think, about a month or 2 ago, and it's just this cute little glass cube with an IMP and some LEDs inside of it, and you can hook it up with IFT and sort of hook it up to any kind of data source that you want. That you can get to with IFT, and one of those is an RSS feed, so that's pretty much anything you're looking for, and just trigger it to glow and pulse and do different things when things happen. So I'm really excited for that, so that I can put it beside my bed, and then rather than like wake up and go about my day and get stressed, I can see like how many emails I need to do and just be like stressed right as soon as I wake up.
Get right down to it.
Get right down to it.
Yeah, that's fun because it's actually kind of closing the loop from Hugo's original ambient colors to display the current Apple stock price idea.
Yeah.
This is sort of the realization of that eventually.
So we're gonna explore the community site just a little bit. So on the left here, there's 3 different links, and they're sort of they're kind of fleshed out, but not quite yet. So the blog is mostly this main page. So this is where you're gonna find all kinds of projects. All kinds of blog posts about interesting code libraries and widgets that people have built. Over on the side here, we have these upcoming events, which we've been trying to do a decent job of keeping up to date, but things sort of come and go pretty quickly. And if you click on events, you can actually get a calendar view that will show you all of the places that we're gonna be. So there's a community hangout on here. Our senior hardware engineer, Brandon, is going to be speaking at a meetup in Santa Clara next Tuesday. And there's actually a few other events coming up right away. I believe on next Thursday the 24th, I'm going to be in Berlin speaking at the Berlin IoT meetup. So if you're around that area, you can come say hello and we can chat. The next part is this projects page. So the projects page isn't quite ready yet. Right now, it's basically just filtering the blog based on like a projects tag. But we're working to flesh this out a little bit more and make it sort of. We want this to be a central repository for where everybody posts their projects. So if you've built something or you've blogged about it, we're gonna set up a system where you can post it here, so it's really easy to share your work and get other people excited about what you've been working on.
Yeah, and do share the work as well, guys. So that's the other thing, is really do, let us know if you're working on interesting stuff, and then we can work out together how we can get it onto the blog.
Yeah, so this is one of the really interesting but not quite realized parts about the community website, is that we're really hoping that this is a resource for our community, but also by our community. And we don't really have a formal system set up for contributing right now. But if you are interested in contributing, post on the forums that you're interested, or email community@electricimp.com. And we'll get you set up, and we'll help you get some posts going and do some editing if you want. We really want to see more community contributions. We've had sort of some guest blog posts, but we'd love to see some of the developers from our community start writing blog posts and sharing what they're excited about.
That's it. I mean, you read on the forums every day, people doing interesting stuff. So you guys on the forums who are posting the things that you're doing and asking questions about the things you're doing, as you near completion, or even a little way into it, if it's a longer, drawn-out process, let us know. That we think a lot of people will want to share what you're finding out, what you're learning from doing this.
Yeah.
One thing that I really like actually is when we get blog posts that kind of go through a couple of dead ends too, right? If you've tried certain things and it didn't work, and you hit snags and found ways around them, or even if you haven't found ways around them yet, that can actually be a really interesting time to stop and tell other people about the process you've worked through. So if you have a particularly interesting challenge and want to talk about where you're at with it, that could be a good thing to do a post on as well.
That's it. There's nothing like somebody else's dead end telling you not to go down that same dead end, or equally that actually no, for my project that is where I want to go, and I don't want to go the way you've gone. That's great. Works both ways around.
And then the last thing I'm going to point out for the community website is this little sign-up box for the community newsletter, because I'd be a terrible, terrible person if I didn't mention it. So we're trying to publish content on the on the community site every week or two, or sorry, once or twice a week, and we've been doing a pretty good job of that so far. If you just want to sort of casually stay tuned in without too much effort, the community newsletter is a great way to do that. So we've been sending out a newsletter once a month with the articles. With some articles from the community site that we think are the most interesting, as well as updates from the Dev Center that Tony's been working on, any upcoming events in the next month, and some other interesting tidbits. So the next newsletter is going out next week, I think, so you can stay tuned for that. So that's the community blog. So the next thing that we wanted to show off a little bit is our fairly newly cleaned up reference library for GitHub. So there's a couple big changes. One is that we've sort of documented it a lot better with the READMEs, and we've talked about code conventions and what's involved for contributing. So a lot of this code, again, is sort of stuff that we've worked on internally. Through customer support or through tinkering and hackathons that we've done, we end up writing a tremendous amount of code, and code that nobody sees is terrible code, so we love to share it and open source absolutely everything that we can. So we have a whole bunch of great web services. There's an ever-growing list in here. Some of the really fun ones, SparkFun this week, I think, announced that they have this new service called data.sparkfun.com. I've got that open here, which is sort of like a very, very bare bones Xively or M2X or other sort of online time series data store. So it lets you create a feed and push data up to it, and then you can grab that data and do things with it. In terms of sort of online data stores, it's definitely not the most feature complete, but that's sort of intentional on their part. It's really designed for all of this sort of like new breed of makers who wants to build hardware things that talk to the internet and just need some point to dump all of their data. What else have we got in here? So the other one that I'm actually really, really excited about is one of our members from the forum, I don't want to mess this up, Circuit Flower, has been doing some cool work with pulse sensors. So they've been working on, I think, a project that's a baby blanket with a pulse sensor in it.
Oh wow!
Sorry, I'm mistaken. So it's a baby blanket with, I believe, some vibration motors in it. And the intent is that one of the baby's parents would wear a pulse sensor, and then they could potentially calm their child by having the blanket pulse in tune with their parents' pulse, their blood pulse. So they wrote some code for the pulse sensor. We cleaned it up a tiny bit, and it's in the GitHub now. Where is this? So you can find it under the hardware section and then pulse sensor. And it's really easy to use. You basically just instantiate a class with is there some example usage down here? So you instantiate a class with a pin, and then you just give it a callback function, and the callback function basically just flips between 1 or 0 or high and low. And I believe that's basically every time your heart sort of beats. So there's definitely, I know I've seen some examples for Arduino and other things using this pulse sensor that are a bit more complete. They do some peak analysis, and they try to do a bit more complex processing. But this is definitely a great starting point, and I'm really excited to see what people do with the pulse sensor. What else have we got that's exciting? And the last exciting one that we wanted to talk about was the Rocky framework. So the Rocky framework, if you guys have read about it in our blog posts or on Twitter, is something that myself and mostly Aaron, who's not here right now, have been working on for quite a long time. We've sort of been talking about it for half a year or so, and then we finally got around to writing it. And the idea is basically when you're writing devices with fairly complex HTTP APIs, you invariably get into this situation where you have your HTTP handler, and then you just have this enormous switch statement, or like 1,000 pages of if and else if statements. And on top of that, you have like all of your authentication and what to do if things go wrong and your error handling. And it's all sort of very miserable. And it's sort of, so we decided to make this framework to make it really, really easy to do routing for your APIs. So if people are familiar with Node, which some people might be, this is sort of akin to Express or other sort of frameworks that are designed to make APIs even easier. So I was going to do this really, really quick demo. So I have my, oh, that's not the one. So we're going to come switch to here. So on the back of my MacBook, I have this new little widget that I've made, which is, I made it for a Hackaday tutorial to get started. It's basically just a little light hooked up to an imp that I can control with anything I want. So I had it hooked up so that whenever you press a button, it would turn the light on or off, and then also send a little message to Twitter to say whether you were hacking or not, with the idea that if you were hacking or busy, then people should go away and not interrupt you. And if it's off, then people are free to come and bug you and ask questions. So right now, I'm going to roll up all of my library classes. So inside of here, I have there's 3 classes that go along with Rocky that sort of wrap everything up. So there's the main Rocky class, which handles everything. There's a context class, which is basically used to wrap the HTTP response. And then there's a route class, which is used just for some fancy syntax thing. But what it lets you do is once you've created a Rocky object, which we did up here, we can specify a path by giving it a verb. So I'm going to do get and a path. So this is the path that we want it to go to. So I'm going to go LED/on, and then we give it a callback function with the context. And then this is our this is now our HTTP handler for if somebody goes to my agent URL/LED/on. So we're going to do something really simple. We're going to send a message to the device called LED, and we're going to pass it 1. And then we're going to send back LED on. All right, this is kind of risky. So some of you may have noticed that.
Do it live.
Yeah, there have been a couple interesting things going on with our system today because we've been pushing out some major updates. So we'll see how this goes. So when I browse to my agent URL, I get this hello world message, and that's because back in my code I set it up so that the default path, which is just slash, is going to return hello world. So I'm going to add /LED/on, and let's see if this works.
Cool.
So I got back LED on, and if I show off my computer here, it's on.
Yeah.
And so we could do the same thing for off. So this is sort of a really sort of toy example. There's a lot more impressive things you can do with it, and there's a couple blog posts on the community forum about this. It allows you to add authorization or authentication classes per route. So I could say you need to have a special API key to turn the LED on or off.
Oh, so like this path is secure to these users, this other path is only available to these other users.
Yeah, so let's go see if we can do this live. Let's secure our API.
All right.
So we can do this after we give our callback function from our get. We can go authorize with context, and whoops, we need that to be a function.
Does that paren, you've got the close function and then the close paren for the app.get. I think you might not want that there.
No, so this is right.
Oh,
so
okay.
the way this works is app.get returns a rocky route, and the rocky route is what has the authorized and unauthorized functions and on there. So this is the main reason why we have this rocky.route is so that we can do fancy things like this, where we specify our route and then we can add things on after it. We could just as easily go LED on route and assign it this, and then go LED on route dot authorize. But let's go back to how we had it because I like that syntax a bit better. So the first thing we're going to do, so the authorize function has to return either true or false. If it returns true, the user is authorized. If it returns false, they're not. So I'm going to start just by returning false, just to do a really quick demo. So now if I come to my browser and I go to hello world, or to the root, I get hello world because I'm authorized, and that's OK. If I go to LED/on, I get unauthorized because that function is returning false.
Yeah, and the LED is still off.
And if I want, I can give a, let's see if I can do this, on unauthorized function context. So if we want, we can even specify a handler to execute when they're not authorized. So the default handler is that it returns a 409. What's authorized? Unauthorized? 401, I think. Yeah, it'll return a 401 unauthorized. But if I don't want that, I could say context.send 401, no, not today. So that's not a very useful message. Oop. Let's see, on unauthorized.
You've got it unauthorized.
Oop, there we go. All right, let's try this again. So now if I come to LED/on and refresh this page, maybe. Looks like we're getting an error.
Looks like your agent hasn't started back up. So agent starts right now, since the maintenance push this morning, there's been a slight slowdown for agent restarts. So you might see 30 seconds to a minute, but that's going to be fixed later today.
So our agent restarted. We got this no, not today. And if we go back to our root one, the hello world should still work. And the place where this gets cool is let's actually just clone all of this and switch it to LED/off. So if we want, we can give this its own authorized function. We're also going to return false. But we can also give it a specific on unauthorized function. So we're going to say you can't turn the LED off. So when I run this now, if I go to LED/on, we're going to get our no, not today. And if I go to /off, we're going to get you can't turn the LED off.
Nice.
So I mean, all of this are things that you can do with just the HTTP handler.
Right.
The whole point of Rocky is that this code is a lot nicer to look at, a lot easier to read, which means that it's a lot easier to maintain. And so the goal is using these kind of frameworks, you'll be able to hopefully, if we did our job right, prototype as well as build production APIs in a lot better ways.
I know I've worked on a couple of things in the last few weeks that had exactly like you were talking about, like 100-line HTTP on request handlers that are just lowercasing every path and checking whether there's a slash in front or a slash behind. Or
Yeah.
So yeah, I can definitely kiss all that goodbye.
And so Rocky will do all of that for you. So Rocky, there's a bunch of settings that you can specify when you create Rocky. And there's a lot of documentation, or some documentation on the GitHub page for it, which you can find on the Electric Imp GitHub page. So you can do things like specify whether you'll allow insecure connections. So by default, Rocky rejects all connections that aren't HTTPS because that's kind of a best practice. You can specify strict routing, which basically says, if we go back to that code, I have this route that's /LED/on, and it's all lowercase and there's no slash at the end. With strict routing off, which is the default, it's case insensitive and it's agnostic towards the slash at the end. If you have strict routing enabled, then this route is only for /lowercase/LED/on without a slash.
Match exactly.
It must match exactly.
Okay. That's super handy. I mean, even that alone is super handy. So
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and take this for a spin.
And the last thing you can do that we should show off, although I'm not going to be able to live code this, so we're not going to show it off, is you can use regular expressions in your routes, and you can pull out the values of those regular expressions.
Wow.
So in the Rocky framework, or in the second Rocky blog post, we build a simple user access control system that's purely within the agent.
Okay.
And one of the API endpoints that we define is /users/ a regular name for the username. And so whenever somebody goes to /users/ something, you pull out that username as one of the parameters, and then you do your checks to see whether you have access to view that account.
So you have a single handler for that one action that can handle every user and will fork depending on whether or not they're a valid and authorized user.
Exactly.
Nice.
So you can do some pretty powerful things with this. So we're really excited to see what you guys get up to with it. Have you played with this, Tony?
I haven't, but I'm definitely going to now. I mean, it's common saying. I've been doing a lot of stuff where you end up writing these big long stacks of code, saying, is it going to this? What's the body bit? Is it one of these? And then what's the value after that? This makes that so much simpler. So much.
This could do all those things.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find the regular expression really quickly, because it is a pretty cool thing. Boop, boop, boop. Here we go. So we'll switch back to this. So right here we have this app.request. So we're looking for a patch, which is it's one of the HTTP verbs that's not super common, but
Can I interrupt real
people.
quick?
Yeah.
I'm just curious, are we looking at the actual inside of the guts of the Rocky class, or is this an example that uses the Rocky class?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So this is an example that uses the Rocky class.
Okay.
So this is the code for the secure RGB LED example, which is what the second blog post is about.
Okay.
Basically, we build a user access control system, and then down at the bottom, we have these functions for getting the current color of an RGB LED, and we have this authorize function to check whether they have read access, which is a function we define up ahead. And if they do, they're allowed to do it. If they don't, they get an unauthorized message. But up here, so here's a nice example of the regular expression. So we have our app.on, so we're looking for the delete verb. So this is if we want to remove a user from the system. Our path is /users, and then this weird little regular expression, which basically says any number of characters that's not a /. So it can be alphanumeric, any special characters, or anything.
So it'll group everything up to the following slash.
Yeah, up to the.
Okay.
So this basically allows for users /anything. There's this variable in the context called matches, which is all of the regular expression matches. And by default, matches 0 is always the basically the full path. So if we grab the first one, it's going to be whatever was matched to this regular expression. And then basically we go through and we check to see whether that user exists. If it doesn't, we return an error. And if it does, we delete them and return OK. So we're not going to go into regular expressions because that's a fascinating topic in and of itself. But you can find some examples of how to do it in that second Rocky blog post. And that's the regular expression stuff, I think, is one of the places where this gets super, super interesting. So I'm going to turn this over to Tony now. So as I mentioned, Tony's been doing tons of really great work in the Dev Center and has made a tremendous amount of new developer guides for developers of all kinds. So I'll let you talk about some of that work that you've done and where people can find those resources.
Yeah, let me pick that up and let me go over and show you guys this, because there's a lot of good stuff here now, I'm pleased to say. If I can find the dear old handy window, wherever that's gone.
And while you're doing this, I'm going to mention really quickly, if you have any questions that you want us to answer during the Hangout, you can either post them. There should be a little questions thing if you're watching this feed on YouTube, or if you want, you can tweet with the hashtag #ImpQuestion, IMPQUESTION. So if you have any questions, you can ask in either of those ways. And we'll do our best to get to those and answer as many of them as we can.
Cool. Okay. Well, let me show you this. What we have here. Here we go. Which I hope you're seeing. Which is our latest incarnation of the Dev Center, which has been slightly reorganized and beefed up. Hopefully, with a whole load of interesting stuff for you guys to make your job easier. Most importantly, I think what I'd like to show today is our new Squirrel language section, which basically covers all the important things that you need to know in the Squirrel language that we use on the IMP. So in the past, we've had to kind of go off to the Squirrel website and maybe look through PDFs or HTML files for help info. Well, we've got it all here. So when you're looking at your IMP API, you're checking out, how imp.wakeup works, or some of the device.send, or many of the other IMP API things, and you need to then also check out some Squirrel code. Well, it's right there in front of you. You can just go click on the menu on the side, go straight from the IMP API here. You're looking at certain things. You can go straight down and check out the whole of Squirrel too. We've got all the aspects of Squirrel covered now. We've got the various objects that you can access and work with, whether those are objects in their own right or the ancillary objects that work with all the various variable types, such as integers, floats, and bools, and so forth. And along with all we also have the various functions, which Squirrel provides. The math functions here. The string functions, let me just scroll down to that, make sure I don't go too quickly. So those are the system functions, and we also have the string functions as well. So, if you're writing something which involves logging data to the IDE log, and you need to set up some format strings for that, well, you can go straight to the site, straight to the Dev Center, and get all the details you need there for that particular one. Format is one I use a lot, so this is really useful for me. This is one of the reasons why I did it, really. It's a real help for you guys in the developer world and the community, but, I have to say, just for me, just having all this here is a quick, right, I'm on this page, I move over to another one, and bosh, there it is. I don't have to go search it all up on Google or find a Wikipedia page or anything like that. I've got it all right in front of me when I need it. When I move from one part of the API to the Squirrel data, there it is. So yeah, pretty much everything I hope you could need is there. And of course, don't forget that we've got our full Squirrel programming guide for those of you who are completely new to the language or are coming to the language for the first time from other languages such as C, C++, C#, all the various and many C derivatives that are out there, then we've got a good long guide to all the various aspects in which Squirrel is different. It's not a programming tutorial. It won't teach you how to code from the start, but hopefully, if you know a lot about this stuff already, this will give you the Squirrel view of how things are done. Whether that's strings, arrays, how Squirrel works with tables, how Squirrel works with objects, the mysterious Squirrel entity that is the blob, that's all well covered. And then you've got, as I said before, you've got your lookup to help you find those little routines and objects and methods that you might have read about and then suddenly finding an application for in the code that you're writing.
This is really great. I think the one that I found most useful so far is the blob library, because there's always the read-in and write-in. You end up using
it's just like format, right?
Yeah, no, well, that's it. I mean, you know, read-in, again, that has so many little data constants that you can key in to manipulate it to get the values that you want, the real-world values rather than Squirrel values, which is particularly handy when you're talking to you know, connected devices that might be only capable of sending over an 8-bit number, whereas Squirrel obviously works with 32-bit numbers. You know, this is how you work to convert them, and that's really handy. Just quick, right? Yep. Which code do I need? Oh yeah, it's the B code, and then you can key it into your code, and off you go.
I think one thing that I discovered through this documentation that I never even found in the original Squirrel documentation was the generator pattern. Squirrel does generators where you can make a function that yields for a while to let the system do something else and then can be resumed without having to bind end everything and store all your context. It'll do it all automatically. And,
yeah, and it's there completely. It maintains all the state variables and everything, so it's as if it's just literally a process that's frozen in the background, and then you pull it back out and, you know, pick up and run with it. In fact, that very neatly brings me on to the other main section, new section of the Dev Center, if I may, and that's our developer guide section, which originally used to be called resources, but now has been much expanded with a whole load, I hope, of really useful information that helps, with the intention of helping developers with specific problems drill down into, you know, the background to the area they're working in. Tom, you produced a very good piece here on working with the IMP's full frequency DAC, fixed frequency DAC, and its samplers. And this goes into it. This is great. This goes into it in some depth. So anybody who wants to start working with this or has a notion that this kind of technology might be useful for their project can go and get a good in-depth guide to what the technology will do, how you implement it, and, you know, give some examples of what sort of situations you might want to implement that kind of technology. So that's one side to it. We've got the I2C section article on that. We've got ones on SPI, on UART, all the three key buses that almost all devices that developers will want to hook up to their IMPs will use one of those buses.
I think the How to Run Offline guide is actually a really, really key piece of documentation too. I think we see a lot of people that get like their first proof of concept together, but once they start fleshing out the behaviors that it's going to need to go through as it gets installed in an actual place and has to live through a power outage or something like that, that's one area where they usually need a good template to get started. So
that's right. And a lot of times people are developing projects and they forget that Wi-Fi goes down occasionally, and you have to understand how to keep your IMP going even when it's not connected anymore. Or maybe you don't want it connected. Maybe you actually want it to go to sleep too in those sorts of circumstances.
Yeah.
And yeah, here we have how to run the IMP offline, and that will go through all the aspects of running an IMP offline, whether you want it to run offline deliberately, how you handle it when it goes off unexpectedly, and all aspects of keeping the thing, doing what you want it to do when you want to do it. The other thing which I know a lot of guys get stuck with in the forums certainly is the communication between IMP devices and their agents. So again, we've got a nice piece on how those two aspects of the platform work together, and then how in turn they communicate with the broader universe of the internet. Not so much from the web service perspective, and would definitely go check out all the web services classes on the GitHub repo. This is more for folks who are looking at, reaching out beyond the agent to talk to web pages for basic control and basic data feedback, and indeed people building, as you can see here on the diagram, building their own apps to talk to their devices. When you're starting out as a developer, ultimately you're going to want some way that your customers, your users, are going to interact with the hardware that you're building, and apps are a way of doing that. And this gives you some idea about how that process works. Just one other thing I'd like to mention in close, if I may, and that's again another key aspect of the IMP architecture is its event-driven programming nature, which is can be a little hard for some folk to kind of get around, particularly when you're coming from the embedded world, and it's very much, I control everything running on the hardware, so I don't have to worry about blocking loops and things like that. Whereas on the that's not quite how things work. We have an operating system. The operating system needs processing resources too. So it's beholden on devs to make sure that their software plays nicely with the other parts of the IMP operating system, and we do that through events, so that events trigger actions, and you write the code which responds to those events. And again, we've got a good guide to talking through that methodology and how you think about working with events and think about working with actions to respond to things, rather than necessarily working to a methodology where you're constantly checking if things have happened, and if things have happened, what has happened, and what of those kind of events, what sub-events might have happened, and which kind of code do I need to run in order to now deal with that. We can sit back and say, right, well, set the system up, and it will tell you when you need to deal with something. So all you have to do is write the code that will work with the message that you're getting.
If you do a lot of polling in your code, if you've got a device that's set up to constantly check a button, or do very long writes and sometimes it falls offline or things like that, this is the guide you really need to come and take a look at, because it's going to make everything run a lot smoother for you and probably will cut down on your code size.
Yeah. All right. Any more Dev Center updates, Tony, or is that about?
That's kind of pretty much it. I think those are the key things. We've tweaked a few things, like we have a new couple of extra FAQs for new folks coming in wanting to know more. Something we posted just recently, which I'm quite proud of, is our new full guide to the Electric Imp IDE, which will take you through literally every aspect of it, from what all the various buttons do. Particularly now we have, at long last, the fantastic Create New Model button, which I know for a fact so many devs have been asking for, and so many devs are very pleased to have received. But basically, it will take you through the IDE, every aspect of it, and you'll, if there's anything you don't understand, this is the place to go and check it out.
All right.
Tony's put in just a tremendous amount of work. It's staggering. Like I'm on there every day for probably hours, and there's still parts of it that I can't keep up with anymore. So that's, if you've been back there recently, you probably haven't been back there recently enough. Go back again. There's more.
Well, it really is. It's really helping us get to the page where the Dev Center becomes just the first port of call for any information you need when you're developing projects based on the IMP, from a software side, and hopefully as we expand out the hardware side too, just the one-stop shop for information.
Right. Let you keep fewer tabs open while you're doing your development.
That's it. Exactly. Yeah, I kind of figure you should have two open. You've got your IDE on one side, you've got the Dev Center on the other, and you can just move between the two, and you need to go nowhere else.
Yeah. Yep. All right, so we're going to answer a few questions. So again, if you have questions, you can either post them in the Q&A part of the YouTube video, or you can ask them on Twitter with #ImpQuestion. So the first one is from Twitter. Twitter user at Jose Navarro. I'm going to mess that up, so I'm not going to try again. Do you give Electric Imp free samples? So lots of hardware manufacturers, if they produce ICs of some kind, you can typically write them an email or call them or write them a letter and say,
Sure.
Hey, I want to check out your product and get some free samples, and they'll gladly ship some out to you.
Well, the key is to say, hey, I'm a very big company that
Yes.
needs only a few samples to start my $1 million production run.
And so I guess the answer is somewhat similar to that. We typically don't give out free samples, but there are some good ways to get free samples. If you can somehow track down somebody from Electric Imp at an event, there's a good chance that they're carrying a few dev kits with them.
Yep.
And
I was going to suggest, everybody in Berlin next week, they, reach out to Matt, grab him, and say, you are Matt Haynes, and I claim my free imp.
Yes, I know your blue hair. Give me an imp.
Yep.
I'm probably gonna have some with me. I don't know how many. Or if you can find, if you're in the Bay Area or in some place that we're traveling to run a workshop, we're typically giving out dev kits for our workshops now. So if you can attend one of those, that's an easy way.
Yep.
Or similar to the free samples with IC manufacturers, if you are looking at a commercial product and you want a dev kit and you don't want to pay like $30 or $40, you can send an email to sales@electricimp.com and start a discussion with them.
Sure. If you've got an interesting new application that you really need some material to test out, I'm usually pretty excited to help you find what it would be like.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then we have a question from Neil Carmichael. So this is actually a really interesting question. So the question is, there seems to be fairly regular questions from people looking to do one-off or short-run products for third parties, either for fun or for profit. Is there something with the IMP to help them out rather than trying to hack developer accounts? So this is sort of this is a really interesting and difficult question to answer. And
It's a broad question.
This is actually something that I've gone through myself. So I made this like ISS overhead project, and I've built about 4 or 5 of them now, and I've sent them off as gifts to people, or they just really wanted one, so I made it for them. And so people who are fairly technical, I'm just like, here's the thing. It's an Electric Imp. Here's basically the instructables for it. You need to follow that, and then you can get it up and running. So blink it up, create an account, blink it up, add the code, click build and run. That's not a great experience, and that's not what most people want. So the other way that I've done it for my friends who are less technical is I've just created an Electric Imp account for them. I've blinked it up, I've added the code myself, and then I gave them their Electric Imp app credentials and told them to go download the Electric Imp app, sign in, and then blink it up. And that's sort of that's one way to do it. Again, it's not a great solution, because if you have like 10 of these with 10 different accounts and you update code, you need to go to them to update all of them. And so the unfortunate answer is to become a customer and use the factory blessing flow and make a simple little app.
Yep. And to my understanding, it doesn't need to be a tremendously huge volume. You don't need to be shipping, thousands or tens of thousands in order to start using those tools. But it's probably not for if you're making 1 or 2 of something. It's probably more work to go through the factory flow than it is to run on a dev account for that type of thing.
I'm hoping that at some point in the future, we're hoping to have some kind of some more complete self-service tools, so that you can just go online, buy some imp months, sign our SDK agreement and everything else, and then get going that way. And that will definitely make it a lot easier. But we're not quite there yet. We're focusing on scalability and performance and uptime and everything else at the moment.
Yeah.
All right, we have another question. So this is from Regan, who's coder-driven on the forums. Can we expect the IMP API to expand much over the next few releases, or does Electric Imp feel that the API for agent/devices are relatively complete? So this is a good question. Right around the corner, coming up very, very soon, I suspect, is release 30. So if you're on the forums, you've probably seen Hugo collecting MAC addresses from a bunch of people to upgrade them. And there's some great new features in release 30 that I know of. There's some access to the internal spy flash, I believe. So
that's geared primarily toward Info 03.
Yeah, so it's that class is really geared towards Info 03, but it does open up new possibilities for Info 01 and 02. Right. So you can store small amounts of persistent data across, I think even like complete power cycles.
Yes, that's the key with the Spy Flash class, is that it's the same as like on Lala or like on some of the other reference designs where you have an external Spy Flash. This would allow you to use the same one that the IMP uses internally to store some data very long term.
Yeah, so we have, right now there's the NV table, which will survive a deep sleep, but if you unplug it and plug it back in, it's gone. Yeah. Spy Flash will let you unplug it and plug it back in. And I mean, we're always looking at new features for the API. I don't think we're ever going to consider it complete. There will always be new shiny features to go after, more powerful functionality that we want to implement. I know one that we've talked about, but we haven't really put on our roadmap yet is a broader pub-sub model for data. So right now you can push data between a device and its agent. We want to make it easier to go between agents and between devices. So that's something that is being looked at in terms of possibilities.
Yeah, I know Release 30 is also going to have a lot of new sort of syntactic sugar and usability improvements around the UART on the device side. Anybody who's ever used the existing UART class to try to implement, so like Gino just did a Modbus class, and it can be a little tricky as you start receiving packets that are longer than the received FIFO on the device. So I think there's a buffered UART in Release 30 and some other fixes that I think are going to make things a little bit easier for people to do that in fewer lines of code.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm. Tony, what have you got to add to this? You're always keeping up to date with cool new features going on and documenting them.
Well, that's it. It's been this big, release throughout 30 thing. I was gonna. Tom beat me to it. I was gonna talk about some of that UART stuff. I think there's some, UART users are gonna find a whole load of really interesting new tools there to help them really sort of, streamline that process. I think they're gonna see a big change there. And indeed, the Spy Flash, it's going to lead to some interesting applications to be able to cache data that's available to the IMP right as soon as it boots up, that sort of thing. I think that's really interesting stuff.
Great. So it doesn't look like there's any more questions right now. Just like always, if you do have questions about what's coming up or how to do something, our forums are always open. There's always people trolling the forums. We're gonna leave you off with a few inspirational contests that you should all be aware of and hopefully entering. And we'll make sure to post all of these links in the video description once this gets published. So there's a couple instructable contests right now. One of them is a home technology contest being put on by Fidgets. There's tons and tons of projects that I've seen that are in some way or another home technology. Whether it's controlling your garage door, controlling lights, barbecuing, any number of home automation type projects. We've seen all kinds, and you guys should make cool instructables and post them to this contest and win cool things. Next one is this great little remote control contest. So we love remote control applications. Are always they're always really cool. We see whenever we go to university hackathons, we see a lot of sort of really simple remote control contests where it's you build your internet connected fidget and you give it this like really simple remote control API to turn left or turn right or go forwards or back or do something interesting. And so this is another really good fit where the remote control doesn't necessarily come from like an actual remote control, but from an app or maybe even another IMP.
We've seen people do IMP plus Sleep Motion as an input device as a remote control, and that can be pretty wild. I guess the integrations I've seen so far have been a little bit tricky. I think that it's definitely still one where people could continue to hammer on it and find leaner ways to do that. But I know it's been done before.
I mean,
pretty interesting.
We've even seen some pretty cool imp-to-imp remote control projects.
Sure.
So not too long ago, Aaron hacked up an example with Firebase where we had a big, I think 16 by 16 NeoPixel grid that was playing. Firebase has a demo, which is a Tetris game, and he hooked up a second imp with a bunch of buttons on it to control the falling piece. And so, there's lots and lots of remote control opportunities. And the last one to leave you with, if you guys don't know about the Hackaday Prize,
Space!
You absolutely should. So the Hackaday Prize is build something, build a connected device, submit it to the Hackaday Prize, which is hackaday.com/prize. And if your project is selected as the winner, the first place prize is a trip to space, which is pretty cool. I think the next prize is like a $100,000 like laser cutter or something like that.
Which is totally rad, but not space.
Let's go see what they say. Oh, they don't have the prizes on there. But they're pretty cool prizes. Here we go. So the top prize is a trip to space. Oh, sorry, the second place prize is only a $10,000 milling machine or cash. Good 3D printer. You can win a trip to Japan to travel to the
Akihabara.
Yes, the Akihabara Electronics District. Skydiving, components,
stuff,
and swag.
Yeah.
So lots of really cool projects. We really encourage you guys to build projects, document them, and enter them in Instructables contests and just Instructables and the Hackaday contest.
Do things.
Do things and document them. All right, so it's 2:30, so that's pretty much perfectly timed end to our Hangout. So thank you, everybody, for watching. We're going to put lots of links down below, and those will link to all of the different resources that we talked about, all of the different contests, the GitHub examples, and everything else. All right, thanks, guys.
Take care.
See you next time.
See you around.